because he had sold the approach so effectively that it would forever be associated with his name, but also because most leaders in government dismissed his urging that they advance from restraining the Soviets to negotiating with them. Dorothy Fosdick, an influential foreign policy advisor in Washington from the 1940s to the 1980s, and the only woman on Kennan's policy planning staff, later recalled that we from time to time debated whether it not be a good idea to bring Kennan back into government as a way to make him more sensible. The Containment George was the George I respected as a public official, not the later one. This book aims to liberate Kennan from containment by exploring the full range of his political ideas, as well as the connections between those beliefs and his feelings. Kennan's love for the people and culture of Russia intensified his fury at the Stalinist repression that in the 1930s to 1950s prohibited contact between Soviet citizens and foreigners such as himself. He opposed Soviet expansion after World War II, in part because it extended the domain of such secret police-dominated regimes. And yet, his love for what he regarded as the essence of Russia also bled into a measure of sympathy for the dilemmas of Soviet leaders. He understood their point of view in struggles with Washington. He even felt, on occasion, more Russian than American. What Kennan imagined as the wondrous mystery of eternal Russia appealed to deep-seated elements of his personality. Scarred by the loneliness he had endured as a motherless child, he longed for some enveloping maternal warmth. Also impelling him was a recurring desire to flee, somehow and somewhere, from the boredom and duty of his regimented daily life. His life pivoted not only from America to Russia, but between other worlds as well. He navigated between his own era of the 20th century and the 18th and 19th centuries, in which he would have felt more comfortable, or so he believed. Living in Milwaukee, Princeton, Riga, and Berlin from the 1910s to the early 1930s, he absorbed ugly biases he never could totally shake, and so in subsequent decades he would toggle between brilliant perception and blinkered prejudice. In his last years, dissatisfied with his limited influence in his own era, Kennan tried to shape the history written about him so that future generations would be receptive to his ideas and his life story. In still other ways, he stood betwixt and between. As a boy who had lost his mother at the age of 2 months, young George had to negotiate between maternal relatives who doted on him and his father, whom they despised. At class-conscious Princeton University, he pinched pennies, unaware of the extent of his inherited wealth. After getting engaged to a daughter of Washington insiders, he found himself cast aside and humiliated. He responded by throwing himself into his work in the State Department, where he rose faster than anyone else in his age cohort. Nevertheless, here too Kennan remained an outsider. He had chosen to study Russian language and history in Berlin, and he oriented himself towards Central and Eastern Europe. These choices seemed odd to the in-crowd in the State Department, who valued Paris and London as the foreign capitals normative in culture and central to diplomacy. For them, Berlin and points east figured as problem-causing and other. Even in the late 1940s, when his influence in Washington and Washington's influence around the world were rising meteorically, Kennan retained a degree of independence. Although he owed much to such powerful benefactors as Secretary of Defense James V. Forrestal, he operated largely on his own terms. As founding director of the policy planning staff in the State Department, the 43-year-old conducted staff meetings like a self-assured professor running a seminar. He alone crafted the influential policy papers for Secretary of State George C. Marshall, whose office adjoined his own. Kennan maintained a certain aloofness in his personal relationships, explained a former member of the planning staff. And this was true in his attitude toward foreign relations, too. He favored a dignity in dealing with foreign countries, not try to become too intimate with them. We get into trouble doing that. With regard to relations with the people of Russia, however, Kennan did seek such intimacy, at least for himself. George and his wife, Annalise, also kept some distance from the fashionable Georgetown set. Though they attended dinners and cocktail parties during the week, weekends they reserved for their 252-acre farm in East Berlin, Pennsylvania.